All right. I was about to say good morning because in my world it is good morning. Sometimes it's good evening. And once again, if anybody watches this, it's at different times. Not to mention the load on this takes a while. So you're definitely not watching this because this ain't live. Okay, so today's processing with AC, I felt like I needed to share something that happened. Well, it happened 2 nights ago, but then yesterday. I have a friend that reached out for prayer. And in the middle of it, I didn't mean to correct her parenting. I just basically made a comment about like, yeah, you do need to tell your children no more. And then the next day she wrote me back and she was like, hey, you don't have kids. True. Like, you're not in, like, that was not encouraging. That is not what I needed to hear. Now, instantly when I got that message, I could, you know how you feel that pinprick of like uncomfortable, and then you could sometimes hear that voice of defense to be like, well, I didn't mean it like that. And, well, how dare I? Like, kind of like, not how dare she? I didn't feel like that, but it was like, she just doesn't know what I meant. Or, yeah, well, she does need to like correct her kids more. Or, it's like there's a series of thought that comes up when you instantly get corrected. I mean, maybe that's not you, maybe that's just me. But in that moment, I totally felt that like, so I took a pause and I thought about it and I'm like, oh my goodness, my friend called me because she needed help and I wasn't encouraging. So I took ownership because that's what, I mean, I appreciate people being honest with me because she's not like, you're horrible. She was like, that's not what I needed. Like, hey, I felt hurt, which if in relationships, you can't do that. If you can't go to the person and say, I feel hurt, it's probably not a very strong relationship if you can't be honest and communicate your feelings. So I sometimes over communicate and that can lose me people. And so I made the comment to her. One of the comments I made to her is, if I can't be corrected, then I sure as heck better not be correcting people. This is good. And then she went on to say like, but hey, this might be something in your life. And I'm gonna try to take these off because I'm trying not to look over here. I'm trying to look straight at the mirror. Not the mirror, camera. But her comment really hit home. And so this is where I'm gonna share something that I think I struggle with. So I have parents. What? Yes. And my parents are wonderful. Like, honestly, I'm really blessed. I don't doubt if I'm loved. I've always felt loved by both of my parents. Compared to most, I've had a pretty good life. It's been very comfortable. But one area that the enemy has used to shortchange me, because a lot of times it's our parents that create blocks for us to go forward. We don't realize it, but if we believe a lie, then we go forward. Was when I was young, I always wanted to be a writer. I had this dream to be a writer. I wanted to be the next Francine Rivers, who's a fictional writer, but she writes stories in such a way that, like, I remember going back and reading Redeeming Love right after I got, like, I'd already read it like 3 or 4 times. Like, I think I read that book like 10 times. I don't know. But after I got saved, like, I read that book and it was like, this is how much God loves me, that he keeps pursuing me. So I'm like, I want to write a book that it can be fiction, but it can still convict people and it reaches people's hearts. So yeah, sorry. That's all that to say. My dream was to be a writer. My mother would take my papers for school. She'd edit them. And by the time they were done, they were her papers. They weren't mine. And that began to build this low confidence. Like, I would clean, she'd clean behind me because it wasn't good enough. It wasn't to her standard. And so with that place, the lie that came in for me, woo, crazy. I'm feeling emotions. I don't know why I'm feeling emotions. I didn't think I would. I just felt like I was supposed to share this. And not that about what my friend said, but with my mom doing that, the enemy put a lie in my head that said, you're not good enough. What you do is not good enough. And so I've never questioned, is AC loved? Like, because my parents always loved me. But I have questioned, am I enough? Am I good enough? Is what I do good enough? And so I kind of adopted a laissez-faire, just like, don't care too much about what you do, because I don't know if you have ever, like, it's like you do your best at something and you give it and it's still not good enough. And it's still like, well, that was good, but like I cook a dinner and, you know, and my family, like it's totally not like we're critical and we don't even know it. And it's hurt me, but I've done it in my relationship. The guy that I'm seeing now, and before him, a guy that I got close to, it's like, and people that get really close to me, it's like, that's great, but you could have fixed that one thing. And I will fixate on that one thing that God doesn't want me to fixate on. I mean, maybe it's like, instead of celebrating progress and process and seeing how people grow, I have been critical and I don't even realize I'm doing it. And I think that's the worst part, is because you're like, with my friend, when she's like, hey, you need to be aware of this, probably for other relationships, including maybe the guy that I'm seeing, it's like, I don't want to be somebody who tears down. I'm called to be an encourager. I'm called to be a cheerleader. I'm called to lift people up. Like, I want to be a life coach, which means I'm celebrating people's victories. But yet, that can come up. And I remember one time I was praying and it's like, okay, what's something that you do? This might be a weird prayer, but if you have time and you got the Holy Spirit inside of you, it's an interesting prayer. It's like, God, what is the one thing that my parents did that I couldn't stand that I'm now doing? And that's what I heard. It's like, I'm very correctional. I correct people. Okay, God. Well, then it's like, well, where did that lie come in? Or something like that. Or what lie am I believing? That was it. What lie am I believing that makes me think that this is true? And I heard back the lie that I was believing was, you're helping them. You want to help them so bad. It's not like you're looking at it and being like, you're horrible. It's not, I'm not thinking that at all. It's like, oh, but this is how it could be better. Like, so it's never good enough, right? Like, it's good, but you could be better. And it's true, because we can always be better, right? We can always grow. And so even if you go back to the beginning where I'm like, well, this is my hashtag done over perfect, is coming from this place of like, I've got to be willing to start something even if I feel like it's not good enough. Even if I'm like, like, I mean, in my mind, I would have, honestly, if I'm making a video, I would have like pictures that come down to explain my points. And how like you see this, because I mean, just to watch a person to me seems kind of boring. I lose interest unless they're saying something deep and meaningful. So I'm like, who's gonna want to watch this, right? But it's like, you know what? I've just got to do it because I feel like God's called me to do it. But it goes back to, I'm just basically confessing like the not good enough, and then you pass it on. And I don't think, so I guess I'm like, oh, I feel all vulnerable. Let me like look at my fingers right now. I can't say look at yourself because I'm looking at myself, and I definitely can't judge anybody because it starts in me. Is maybe you struggle like I struggle, and if a friend was to write you that, you'd just feel offended and be like, they just don't know. But I have to ask myself, do I love my friend or do I love myself? Do I care more about my feelings and like my safety and my zone, or do I care enough to hear her and realize, ouch, she's right. And the very thing that I hated that my parents did to me, I do. And I know my parents and I know how amazing they are. So I know they didn't mean to do that to me. It's like, it's just this cycle that keeps getting passed down. And so it's something I want to stop. I want to learn how to celebrate people. I want to learn how to celebrate progress and process. And that's, I guess, kind of why this thing is called Processing with AC, is because I've got to. It starts with me. Can't be like, you've got to too, because it starts with me. I've got to learn to celebrate people's process and their progress and their steps forward instead of seeing where they should be. Because if I can't do it with myself and I can't do it with others, Yeah, if I can't do it with myself, I'm definitely probably not going to do it with others, or I might do it with my others, but I can't do it with my, like, I don't know. It's a mess. But I just felt like I should be honest, vulnerable, let you know a process that went on inside of me, how somebody pointed out something inside of me, and I went, and there's some deep roots there that, yeah, God is continually to pull out, to change the way I think, to say, yep, you are good enough. You can do this. But I got to change the way I believe. And when I change the way I believe for me, I believe it's going to affect the way that I talk to other people. Okay, I think that's it.